Muy buenos días, o buenas tardes, o buenas noches. I don't know if you'll be watching this in the morning or in the afternoon, or at like 1 a.m. like most college students do, right? So remember, we're talking and just giving you some extra explanation about our past tense forms in Spanish, right? So in Spanish, we have these two different past tense forms we've been using in our stories, building them into the stories. And you know that for the preterite tense, I use the one hand back and say that happened, it's done, it's completed. And for the imperfect tense, we use the two hands back with our gesto to show this was ongoing in the past, it's dragging out, right? So those are the two different ones. And I just want to give reminders of how we form them because we don't see necessarily all the forms in the stories that we build. Okay, so here are our different forms. So remember, to form regular verbs, when they form the preterite tense, the past tense regularly, all we have to do is we have to take off the AR of the verb and add e if it's the yo form, aste or iste if it's the tu form, o io, remember we have the accent on the end and that's where we punch it when we say it, if it's él, if it's ella, or if it's usted, okay? The amos or imos if it's nosotros, nosotros hablamos, nosotros comimos. This is the vosotros form. We haven't talked much about it in class, and we'll leave it at that, just so that you see what it is. But we usually use this one for the they or you all. You know, in class we say ellos or ellas, or ustedes is for this form, ellos, ellas, and ustedes. So that's for regular verbs. They form this way. We take off our AR, we add aste, o, amos, astes, aron, for who's doing it or who did it in this preterite tense. If it's an ER or IR verb, like vivir, o comer, o aprender, we take off the ER, IR, and add iste, io, imos, istes, and ieron. So some of those obviously looking very familiar to you because we've built them into stories. And so that's how we form the regular preterite tense. Okay, so now in this imperfect tense, when we're dragging it out, right, we have the regular formations of those verbs as well. And some of these are going to be very familiar to you because we've seen those in class, right? So we have in our imperfect form, again, if it's an ER or IR verb, right, we take off that ER or IR and add ia, ias, ia, iamos, iais, ian. And if it's an AR verb, we take off that AR and we add aba, abas, aba, abamos, abais, aban. Right? So examples of that we've had in class. Mientras, volaban. Volaban, we're dragging that out because it's ongoing. Mientras volaban, while they were flying. Julio se dormía. Se dormía. We're dragging that out. He was sleeping over the flight, over that same period of time. Cuando María tomó. Tomó, María tomó el libro, y lo leía, no? Because we're dragging that one out again. She was reading the book over that amount of time, right? Other example that we have in our book, estaba, Katia, estaba nadando, estaba nadando. We're dragging that out. Estaba was swimming, right? When Marcos se despertó, woke up immediately. That's something that happened. Se despertó y vio un tiburón, right? That's something that happened, right? Y gritó, something that happened. We're not dragging that out. So remember, those are our preterite and imperfect differences. In class, I use it with one hand back for preterite. I use it with two hands back for that imperfect, dragging things out. And this is just a reminder of how we form all of the different forms depending on who's doing it. Because in class, as you know, sometimes we just see he or she did it or they did it. And we want to be able to see what if anybody did it. Okay, how do we form that verb in that way? Now, the problem is these are all the easy ones. So, but then we have a lot of irregulars, as I've mentioned in the class before, and if you recall, That's where I gave you, some of you, this sheet that has all the irregulars of the preterite tense, right? So we see that there are a lot of them. I just want to go over a few real quickly so that we've seen them, because there are so many irregulars in this preterite tense. So we have this group that are like totally irregular. We've mentioned this one, I think. It's actually an IR verb, so I'll put it over here. It's ir, all right? And that goes fueron, they went. We had that in class. Fueron, ir goes fueron. And we have a number of other irregular verbs in this preterite tense. There's just so many of them. And we're going to just look at a few to see how that goes. But we're going to do it pretty quickly. So, as you can see, a number of these are irregular, right? And with these on down, we kind of consider these and some others, we call them changing their stem drastically. So this one was just totally irregular. Where does fueron come from? Ir, right? Totally redoes the verb, it's totally irregular. But these we can see in the verb where they come from, but they drastically change their stem in this past preterite tense. So like decir, we've seen these in stories. Yo dije, les dijo, he or she said to them, for example, right? Tener, yo tuve, I had. Nosotros, tuvimos, we had. Hacer totally changes its stem, its root. Yo hice, ellas hicieron, they did something. Estar totally changes its root, its stem. Tú estuviste, you were, right? So there we have just an example of some of them that are totally irregular. Okay, so then the good news is, on the imperfect side, we actually have the regular endings that we've already mentioned, the aba, abas, aba, abamos, ia, ias, ia, iamos. We just take off the er, ir, and add ia, ias, ia. Take off the ar and add aba, abas, aba. For 99% of the verbs in the language, that's the good news. Buenas noticias, eh? Because the imperfect only has 3 irregular verbs in the whole language. Only 3 irregulars in the whole language, and they are so there we have those 3 irregular verbs in the language, and that's all we have to worry about in this imperfect form. Ir goes iba, we've seen one of these in the story. Iba, iban a la ciudad, we have in our story, right? They were going, iban en bicicleta is what we say. Iban en bicicleta, they were going on bike, right? So iba, ibas, iba, íbamos, ibais, left out of there, iban. And then baird, we just consider this, it's just a tiny bit irregular, because see, it uses the same regular endings, ia, 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 ias, ia, iamos, iais, ian, same regular endings, but it keeps its e instead of taking off the er, it just leaves that e there. So it's just considered a little bit irregular. And then ser does something totally different, changes its whole form. Era, eras, era. Remember, we have this in the story as well. Cuando era niña. All right, so era, when she was a kid. Okay, so there's your imperfect irregulars. Just a few irregulars in the language. And there we have just a brief recap or brief review of our preterite and imperfect. This happened and is done. This one ongoing or dragging it out in the past, and showing you all the different forms of who's doing it, rather than maybe just the yo, él, ella, they, like we see in our stories mostly. You get a good snapshot of all the forms that we have of these verbs in that past tense. Muy buenas noches. Hasta luego.